Hey, everybody. Welcome to the GMI Rocket Show. I'm your host, Roman Zelechenko, former immigration attorney turned entrepreneur. I am the co founder and CEO of Laborless, an immigration tech company that automates H-1B visa compliance, and also the founder of GMI Rocket, a digital marketing agency focused on the immigration and global mobility industry, and which brings you this show. Today's episode number 144. And our guest today is my good friend and former colleague, Nhu-y, who is a former immigration attorney herself and is now the founder of a company called Optima. And Optima helps immigration law firms and tech companies and other businesses in the immigration industry really with anything regarding operations. So everything from their technology stack to building out processes to even growth and other things. And we're going to talk about everything that E does for law firms and companies in the industry and her career, as an immigration lawyer working across, any job you can imagine in the immigration space she's had. Which is why she's the perfect person to come in and help law firms and immigration companies, build up and do better with what they already have. So I'm really excited for the episode. Before we get started, I do want to say thank you to the main sponsor of this episode, 8 a.m. DocketWise. So for folks who don't know, 8 a.m. DocketWise is an end-to-end immigration case management platform that provides best-in-class immigration forms, really customizable questionnaires in a ton of different languages, industry-leading integrations with payment apps, calendar apps, my company, Laborless, great customer service. They also are really wonderful about creating content and materials for the immigration industry. That's one of the things I really appreciate about DocketWise and the team. DocketWise has a content library, including a really good blog, ebooks that are available for free for immigration lawyers, a podcast. They support this show and other things that help bring content, new material to the immigration industry. So if you are an immigration law firm or an in-house team and you're looking for technology to help you with your case management or even just immigration forms, which is, DocketWise's bread and butter, check them out. The website is 8am, so the number 8am.com/DocketWise, or click the link in the show notes. And when you talk to them, tell them that you heard about them from the GMI Rocket Show. Okay, so without further ado, really excited for the episode. E, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited because we've known each other for forever now. And we obviously know each other, but this is going to be a great way for me to learn about what in the world you're doing now and what you've been doing for the past 10 years. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the show, Roman.
Okay, we typically dive into the backstory of the guest. And so for anybody who follows you on LinkedIn or elsewhere, some of them might be aware of your backstory, but, if you don't mind sharing it, let's go back to, you're an immigrant yourself. We both came here when we were younger, but you came, I was really young. I was 2 years old. You were a little bit older than that. You are originally from Vietnam, where you were born. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know that's been kind of at least part of your identity here in the U.S., but you were a little bit older, so you have memories from those days. What do you remember? What was it like, kind of being a young girl in Vietnam, and what do you remember from those days?
Yeah, so I moved to the U.S. when I was 7, and I remember during COVID, I started this thing where I did 30-day immigrant stories, and it really brought back a lot of memories from what it was like growing up in Vietnam, the adjustment to the U.S. I still, I was 7, so a lot of the memories aren't fresh anymore, but there are very distinct core memories that I still have. And one of them was right before we were about to go to the U.S. For some reason, I thought that the United States of America does not have snacks. And so my mom gave me a little bit of money, and I went to the market because back in Vietnam, back in the day, the kids can just walk and roam themselves to the market. I went to the market and I bought beef jerky because I was like, I have to make this last for the rest of my life because they won't have any beef jerky in the U.S. And I remember that feeling of being so sad, a day later when I ate all of the jerky. And I said, I'm not going to have this ever again in my life. Mm-hmm. So thinking back, it's a really silly story, but I think that was just that immigrant feeling of what is the unknown and just trying
Mhm.
to figure out your place in the world and what this means.
So you went to school for a few years in Vietnam, obviously before you moved. What do you remember from kind of school there? Because you obviously stepped into school here. You're a new kid here. Did you know English, by the way, when you arrived here, or not at all?
I did not. So
Okay.
I didn't speak, well, I didn't speak any English when I came to the US, and I was put into ESL, so English as a second language classes.
Mhm.
And I remember that because when we moved from Kinh Giang, which is in the tip of southern Vietnam, to a town called Pflugerville, it's in the suburbs of Austin, Texas. It was a huge culture shift. I was one of the few, Asian people at that town in this small town in Texas. And I didn't speak any English. And it was really, really hard because the ESL program wasn't intended, it wasn't structured in a way that could help me. So I remember the teacher would say, write the word cat in 4 columns down a page. So I would write cat, 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 200 times. And then she would say, now write the word dog. So then that was their way of trying to teach me English. And that didn't
Mhm.
really work for me.
Interesting. Were the kids nice to you? Like, do you remember?
I think it was hard because I didn't speak English. So I didn't really
Mm.
know if they were nice to me or not.
That's fair.
But so I'm the youngest of 6 kids. So when we
Mhm.
moved to the US, the good thing is I feel like I had a built-in friends network, right?
Mhm.
When you have 5 siblings to growing up with. But growing up in second grade, honestly, I was probably that dorky immigrant kid, that didn't really speak the language, didn't really understand I didn't have any of the cool games or toys or clothes. So kids were probably nice to me, but I didn't really have a lot of friends when I first
Mhm.
moved over here because I was just so different.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
interesting. I reflect on, I think I went to ESL too when I first got, in kindergarten or like pre-K or whatever it was.
Yeah.
We already lived here for a couple of years, but
Yeah.
my parents didn't really speak much English, my grandmother. So I didn't really speak English going into elementary school either, even though we'd been here for a
Oh,
few years.
really? Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that about
Yeah,
you.
like I learned English basically through watching like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and other cartoons.
Really?
And maybe being around here, I picked up a few words, but at home we spoke Russian because that's
Yeah.
the language that we came over with, and
Yeah.
our family did, and our friends and whatnot. So,
Yeah.
but in New York, especially in Queens, I was probably one of like 6 kids who spoke Russian, but then there
Yeah.
were like five Pakistani kids and 3 Indian kids and 2 Chinese kids. Like ESL is probably half, it's a lot of kids, right? And so it's interesting for me and, to hear people's stories when they move here as small kids, especially to a place like, a suburb in Texas where, maybe there were folks there who spoke Spanish, right? But
Mhm.
probably very few people who look like you, especially back then.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, because now you're such a hard worker? You've done a million different jobs and now,
Mhm.
you run your own business. When you were a kid, do you remember being kind of like a studious kid? Were you more, put your head down and work, or were you kind of more entrepreneurial, which you obviously are now, but did you see any of those kind of patterns when you were little?
So when I was really little, and this is another core memory, because Vietnam is a very, traditional culture, especially the family I grew up in. So I
Mhm.
remember, and our house is right next to my dad's parents' house, my grandparents' house. And I remember there was this one incident where we were eating rice from a big pot. And this all relates. And my grandmother said an old Vietnamese saying, basically saying, "Oh, the burnt rice at the bottom is what the girls eat." And I
Mm.
remember being a really little kid, and I was probably 5 at that time. And I told her, that doesn't sound right. I don't like that. Because I think even from that age, I had a really strong sense of what justice is and equality. And I knew very, very young that I wanted to be a lawyer. I don't
Mm.
think that I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I think, even as a little kid, I was just like, I want to grow up and I want to go to law school because there are things that I see around me that I don't like and I want to
Mm.
change.
Where do you think that came from? That's really interesting.
Part of it, my family jokes because I'm the youngest of six, and they're just like, "Oh,
Right.
you're the little one, and you're the one who's always arguing." That normal joke of, "Well, you're always arguing with us. You should go to law school." That
Yeah.
they think it comes from that. I hope it comes from something else.
Right.
My origin story, I hope, is growing up in that culture and seeing some of the way people are treated made me want to do right within the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a deeper sense of
Mhm.
justice or equality, right?
Yeah.
Probably it's a mix of both. You know what I mean? I mean, it could be that you felt that way, but then the fact that you were arguing and people told you to be a lawyer kind of maybe
Yeah.
put you on that path.
Yeah.
Um,
So Roman, what about you? Did you get the same from your family?
I not really. I'm the oldest of two, and
Mhm.
I mean, I am argumentative, and I'm stubborn, so that could be, a thing. But I don't, nobody really pushed me into going into law school at all.
Yeah.
I saw both my parents work in like the financial sector. We're in New York, and so I felt that that's what I'm going to do. And I entered college studying financial economics,
Yeah.
and interned, in finance and everything. And then by the end of it, I was not really stimulated. You know what I mean? And then I
Mhm.
had an internship in college at a law firm, and I just really loved it. I thought how
Mhm.
interesting it was. Took some classes, but yeah, same. I kind of, maybe something that pushed me, a family pushed me with, but it could have just been. I think it's just random, to be quite
Yeah.
honest with you. But so okay, so so you're the youngest of six, and you are, maybe argumentative, maybe trying to, when you're the youngest of six, you need to make an effort to be heard. I mean, I
Yeah.
have my cousins in Israel. There's seven of them, and so like I know the youngest has to try. I've
Mhm.
seen it, right? And so that could also be, part of it. Who knows? But okay, so you're in school here. You're in Texas. You're obviously learning the language and sort of acclimating. Um, do you remember kind of, as you were going through high school, and were you already set on being a lawyer? I mean, I know you said you wanted to, but it's one thing to want to as a kid. It's another thing to really take those steps in school. So were you doing that, prepping, maybe thinking about what college you can go to eventually go to law school? Like, what did you know about that, given the fact that you're, kind of in an immigrant family with presumably no lawyers in your family yet at that
Yeah.
time?
So I knew from a very young age I wanted to be a
Right.
lawyer. But when we moved here, you're right. How do I become a lawyer? It's
Right.
not like we have no one else in my family is a lawyer. No one else has gone to law school. But I was always very, very high achieving. I think I'm intelligent, but I think lots of people are intelligent. I think I just probably as an immigrant, I feel like I have to work extra hard because we came here with nothing. And if you want to create something out of nothing, you have to try three times as hard as the next
Right.
person. Right.
Yeah.
So I remember when I was in high school, I was in a million clubs. I had to be the vice president of the senior class. I had to be the president of the debate team and the president of the I forget the National Honor Society. I was
Nice.
in the Business Professionals of America. I did a lot of things, not because I felt like I had to do them, but actually because I had a genuine interest. I was just like, this is what I want to do with my life. I know I want to be a lawyer. These are the things that will help me get there.
Mhm.
So I think I was always been really driven, honestly, almost out of necessity. Right? When you have nothing, you have to work really hard to get things. So when I graduated high school, I was actually voted, most likely to succeed in my high school class
Nice.
because I was just everyone knew how hardworking I was. I was like, a bulldog with a bone in his mouth. I was not going to stop until I get whatever I wanted to get.
So you graduate high school and you're in Texas and you go to a small college in Pennsylvania
Yeah.
to graduate in political science. What brought you there? Bucknell University. I don't know anyone who's been there.
Yeah.
So kind of what was that decision like?
Honestly, I didn't know anyone who went there either. So the way when I looked at college, because we had no money. When I looked at college, what I did at that time was I searched, schools that had full financial need, and there's only about a few dozens of them that if they admit you, they will make sure you can go there, and not just with loans, with grants and
Grants.
scholarships,
Yeah.
financial needs-based scholarship. And at that point, Bucknell was one of those schools. So when I was accepted, I mean, in Bucknell at that point, it was one of the most expensive private schools in the country, right? So I think, I mean, and this was almost, oh my gosh, we went to college in 2006, but 2006 money, it was, I think, close to $60,000 a year all in with room and board. There was no way, that was double what my dad makes annually, right? There was no way we could afford that. But the reason why I accepted the going to Bucknell was because of their financial aid package, and I graduated with very, very little debt. Most of it was needs-based scholarship. And I didn't get the normal college experience where, your parents take you all around the country and you tour different colleges.
Right.
This was just me just figuring out what colleges can I go for free or almost as close to free as possible. So the first time I actually went to Bucknell was when I flew up there for orientation, and I knew nothing about that school. And so, I showed up and it's in the middle of Pennsylvania. I mean, there are Amish people around. You see mountains, and it's really very, very rural, but it was free. It was very, very close to free.
Did you go by yourself, or did anybody in your family escort you?
I went by myself. I mean, we didn't have any money. So I bought a one-way ticket. I was 17 years old. I had 2 suitcases, and I went by myself. And within a week of starting, I found a job. I started working at the library there because I needed money.
Yeah. That's such an immigrant story. Of like, were your parents sad, or were they kind of, they understood that that's how it works in America and most people go away to college, and they just said, good luck and we'll see you on winter break?
Yeah. So, by the time I went to college, most of my siblings had gone to college.
Yeah, that's true.
But my siblings all went. So we lived, in the suburbs of Austin. So all of my siblings went to UT Austin and they just lived at home. So I was the first one to leave the nest at 17. But I think my parents knew how strong-willed I was and what I wanted to accomplish. So that there was no way they could say no, because I told them, listen, it's practically free. We don't have to take out any money. You don't have to support me financially in this decision. So they trusted me, and I packed my 2 suitcases and I went by myself. And I didn't really get to go home very often because of the cost, right?
Yeah.
And they actually, so the first time, my family, my parents, and it's just really my mom, my dad couldn't make it because he had to work. The first time that they went to Bucknell was when I graduated. My mom came up to attend my graduation.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's same for me for college, but I do think that my mom wanted to come up, and I was always like, no, it's fine, or whatever. But yeah, exactly. I think Americans, when the parents go to college, and obviously if you have the means to travel around and choose, it's a very different experience. Whereas, with immigrants, like, they don't know what to expect. And so they're kind of like, yeah, go and we'll see you later. And then it never happens until you graduate.
Yeah.
So you studied political science, obviously at that point you knew you were going to become a lawyer. You went to law school in Boston College. And you graduated. We both graduated in 2013, which is crazy. Over a decade ago. Time flies. And you got a job. We got our first jobs at an immigration law firm, right, in Arlington, Virginia. So, I've shared this story before, and this is not about me. This episode's about you. Did you know that you wanted to be an immigration lawyer? Because a lot of people say, oh, you're an immigrant, therefore it makes sense that you want to be an immigration lawyer. I had no idea what immigration law was, despite the fact that my family went through the process. I remember going to the citizenship interview and, all that stuff. Did you know about immigration law and what it was, or was this sort of something you fell into?
Honestly, I fell into it, specifically business immigration, right? Because I think when people hear immigration, especially if you have no connection to this world, when you hear immigration, you think of, family-based immigration or refugee and asylum type of immigration. You don't think business immigration. I had never heard of that ever before. And it kind of landed on my lap in the sense that when I was I went straight from Bucknell to Boston College. And the reason was, again, financial need. But Boston College also has very generous needs-based scholarships. So when I went there my second year, Boston College Law had a program where it's an externship program
Mhm.
where, you still pay tuition for the semester, but you spend the semester and they match you up with a law firm. When I first told my parents I were doing that, they were just like, so let me get this straight. You're paying the school to work somewhere for free.
Yeah.
We don't understand. And I told them, I don't know anyone in this world. It's not like I have connections who can hook me up with a job afterwards. I have
Right.
to get my foot in the door somehow. And this is how everything kind of landed on my lap in a way. It fell into place because I was matched with Fragment. So then,
Mm.
I did my externship with them for a semester at Fragment. And then after that, for my 3L year, I worked as a clerk for them, and that time they paid me.
Yeah.
And then, so that's why everything it fell into place. But before that, I knew nothing about business immigration.
Did you have any courses at Boston College, at the law school around immigration law?
Yeah, so they had an immigration course, and they also had a business immigration course by an adjunct
Nice.
professor. I took both of those classes, but I think, Roman, you and I have been in the space long enough to know that law school is not the real world, right? So
Right.
you can take business immigration law in law school, you're reading about cases from 100 years ago, case law, but they're not really teaching you how to advise clients, how to fill out forms, how to do case
Right.
strategy. So I think having that actual experience at Fragment really made me understand, oh, this is what business immigration law is, and I like it. It's fun. I don't have
Mhm.
to go to court. It's transactional, but I can still be strategic.
Impact people's lives directly. Yeah, I say this a lot, especially to, I guess I went to Brooklyn Law School, and so
Yeah,
sometimes, Brooklyn Law School students ask me about stuff, and I think BLS is a sleeper school in terms of the immigration
mhm,
industry. We had like 4 or 5 classes, and
yeah.
we had about 2 or 3
Wow.
externships. So
Yeah.
I took a basic, overarching
Mhm.
immigration class. I took a business immigration class with Cyrus Mehta, who's
Yeah.
awesome. I took a refugee class. I took a crimmigration, a deportation
Ooh,
class.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I had an internship. I took a class that was in conjunction with an internship at the U.S. Attorney's Office of
Yeah.
the Eastern District in Brooklyn at the immigration unit. So I got to see the
Oh
government
my
side too.
God.
I actually posted about it recently because I found my ID, like that says,
Yeah.
Department of Justice. At,
Yeah.
I had my little badge. You know what I mean? And those were all classes that were part of, and that's not to, by the way, I also interned at Fragaman in the New York
Yeah.
office,
Yeah.
and clerked for them for a summer and then for a semester. And then I had, internships at another law firm, and then I had an internship at a nonprofit. I mean, and all
Yeah.
of this was either through or because of the law school. And so I'm very lucky. Like
Mhm.
I got out of that school, and I felt, obviously I was naive, but I felt that I could, like, give me a client today. I got it. But you're right. It's nothing. The real world
Yeah.
is nothing like school.
Yeah.
So you graduated, and we both went down to Arlington, Virginia. We worked at Erickson Immigration Group together,
Yeah.
where we kind of made our, what's the word? Cut our teeth. Is that what they say?
Yeah.
Where we like learned, and so obviously from there we had our paths. But I want to talk a little bit about your career because
Mhm.
you were we were at EIG together, then you went to Fragaman, and then you
Yeah.
had so many different jobs. But it's not that you went from law firm to law firm, which people do. They move around. You went from sort of law firm to in-house to startup
Mhm.
to immigration service, like a different type of immigration business. And so I kind of want to
Yeah.
talk about these things a little bit because I
Yeah.
think that it would be a disservice to have you talk about how you've started your business, Optima LegalOps
Yeah.
Consulting, without talking at least a little bit about what you learned at these different positions. So again, we started together in Arlington, and then you went back to Boston, obviously, and
Mhm.
you went back to Fragaman. So from there, right? I mean, it's sort of like the dream. You work you work at a law firm, and then
Yeah.
you go in house. What was that difference initially? Because you went from Fragaman and being a more traditional lawyer to Microsoft, where you worked in-house. What was the
Yeah.
biggest transition there, for that first kind of big jump that you took with your career?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. But Roman, and I want to tell you this quick story, sidetrack a
Okay.
little bit, because I don't know if I've ever told you that, how I got the Ericsson immigration job,
No.
which kind of started this whole journey, because I was in law school. I had no money. And I remember, so they called me and they're like, okay, we would love to interview you. It's going to be in person in Virginia.
Yeah.
I'm living in Boston right now. And I figured and they were like, oh, can you come in 2 days to our office? And, I pull up the Google, I'm looking to see how much it would cost to fly down there. And I think it was like $300 or something. And that was so much money. I had zero money. So I did the cheapest option I could to get down there, which I found an overnight Amtrak, because otherwise they wanted to meet me first thing in the morning, which would mean if I have to fly down, I would have to fly down the night before, get a hotel room. And this was racking up to be, at least $500, right? So then I was just like, okay, I'm going to get an overnight Amtrak and sleep on the train, and then wake up, it arrives in DC at 7 a.m. I'll change at the station and then go meet them. So that's what I did. And then what I think they probably felt sorry for me, because I told them that's what I did. And that's probably why they gave me the job, to be honest.
Did you interview in DC? Because I also had an in-person interview, and mine was in Woodbridge, Virginia, which is like 2 hours south of DC. And I remember it was actually on my birthday, or the day after my birthday. And I remember that I graduated law school. I had a birthday dinner with like some friends and family, and everyone was sort of, having a couple glasses of wine or something. And I remember thinking, I have to, like, you guys are all going home after this. I have to go drive. I think I rented a car, and I drove through the night from New York City down to Woodbridge.
Oh, no, I said DC, but I meant Woodbridge.
Yeah,
the suburbs. It was a whole journey.
That's farther. Yeah, it's a whole journey. Yeah. Maybe they felt bad for me too.
Honestly, maybe that's why we got a break into the States. But yeah, so we started together as baby attorneys, and I went to Fragment. And then, to your question, the transition from being an associate at a law firm to going in-house at Microsoft, what was that like? And to me, honestly, it was so thrilling, because I think after I was at Fragment, I took a look at myself and I realized, do I want to do this for the rest of my life? Do I want to be an immigration lawyer? There were aspects of the job that I really, really loved. And there were aspects of the job where I was just like, wow, things are really inefficient, not because of Fragment, but just in the legal space in general. And I'm so junior in my career that I feel like I can't make these changes. And I have all these ideas, which I guess is the origin story of Optima, starting to grow. So making that transition to Microsoft was really, really exciting for me, because when you go in-house at a company like Microsoft that represents 10,000 visa-dependent employees, they have outside counsel, but they have such a large in-house legal team. You really have a lot of opportunities to work on operations. How do we reduce legal spend? Because we're spending millions with outside counsel. How do we start clawing things back and bringing things in-house and growing our offshore team in India, or using our technology? Because Microsoft built something called MIMS, which is their own immigration case management system. So just figuring out, process-wise, business-wise, how do we run an immigration business, right? Which is not what you do at a law firm, because at a law firm is how can you be the best lawyer you can be and be compliant. And they don't only teach you that in law school, of how to run an immigration, any type of legal business.
Definitely. Yeah, I felt that way as a lawyer too, but I was thinking more about, how do I get more clients for this firm? How do we market? How do we think about branding? But same thing, like, I was a baby attorney, and I shared my ideas, but my job was not to think about marketing and sales. My job was to file applications, right? And do the work and represent the clients. And so I guess, like you, I also sort of had some ideas and thoughts about how this could be done better or differently. That sort of has also led to what I do today. So you moved in house. I remember MIMS actually. I remember at one of the ALA conferences that they actually had a booth because I think they tried to like commercialize it for some time, but I guess that didn't go anywhere. But I do remember that. And so you're in house at Microsoft, huge organization. You're now able to represent and support your your employees. And did you have any say in operations or like technology? I mean, were you able to have an impact or some impact, to the extent that you were thinking?
Yeah, so I was at Microsoft for 3.5 years. And during that time, there was a lot of opportunities to do this type of business and operations work. So one of the things that I was responsible for was we have a large team in India who's kind of our first line of defense when it comes to communication. So all the emails from all of our employees would go in, and that team would be the first person to respond and then escalate to our team and to our attorneys if they couldn't answer those questions because they're legal in nature. That team, it's very large abroad. So, and then they needed a lot of training and also just templates and process flow on how to handle this communication volume, right? Because you're looking at 10,000 visa dependent employees who have lots of questions. And this was during the period of Trump's first term. So that's what I own. I own that workflow of communication and management of our offshore team when it comes to their communication with our employees. So that was my first really major project of how do I build processes that was efficient, but not just efficient because because law is a service industry at the end of the day. So you can't look at it as just widgets, right? Efficient, but in a sense, in a way that still made our employees feel good and feel supported. So because it can't be cookie cutter answers that makes people feel like they're talking to robots.
Right.
So just working with that team and working through process flows and templates was really, really exciting and empowering because I was like, oh, being a lawyer can open a lot of lawyer adjacent doors, right?
And it can mean a lot of different things depending on the environment you're in. You were still a lawyer. I mean, Microsoft has a small firm inside, effectively, right? A small immigration firm inside. And so, and you were doing legal work, but just slightly differently from how you would as an outside counsel, maybe more strategic, maybe more beneficiary facing, right? Maybe a little bit more, as you said, creative in terms of operations because outside counsel is supporting you. And so if you want to try something different, you actually kind of have the authority to do that because you're paying the law firm, right? So they're your client. I mean, you're their client. So you could ask them to try different things. So did you find that Microsoft allowed you, because it's such a big organization, did they allow you some creative freedom or to like experiment things or to really put a stamp on that, the process of the organization?
Yes, I think Microsoft as the immigration team was very collaborative. So I think there was definitely lots of opportunities to say, hey, listen, maybe we should bring this work in-house, or maybe we should tell our outside counsel to not do it this way because it'll be cheaper for us as a company, etc. There were a lot of opportunities to voice opinions and hopefully to change some of the structure.
Wow.
But I guess leading to your question of, I think Microsoft was really my first taste into what life could be like. It was the bridge, because I was still an attorney at Microsoft. It was the bridge between being an attorney full-time and then moving into more of an operational role.
And so that's a really good segue. Before we get, because now you go for Microsoft, which is, of course, a technology company, but as you said, you're actually working as an in-house counsel. This is where you make a move to a company called LegalPad, which has since been acquired, which was an immigration tech company. In fact, they started as a company that only automated H-1B visas, which was really cool. I remember I connected with Todd and team way back in the day. But before we get there, I do want to take a quick pause just to say thank you to the second sponsor of the show, of this episode, which is Lex Reception. So for folks out there listening, watching, Lex Reception is a legal intake, reception, and client support service. So from answering phone calls and messages in real time to scheduling appointments, Lex Reception provides immigration law firms with 24/7 legal answering specialists. So basically, it's like having your own receptionist team, but you don't have to hire them full time. They are trained and staffed by this company, Lex Reception, so that the law firm that hires them doesn't have to worry about missing a call from a client or a prospect. Right. I mean, that happens all the time. Somebody calls and you run to the phone, and by the time you get there, they've hung up and you have no idea who it was. Or say they reached out to you. I mean, when people ask me for recommendations for lawyers, I give them a few names. And frankly, a lot of times, whoever gets back to the prospect first is the one who gets the work. So with Lex Reception, they can be there to make sure you never miss a call. They can also proactively reach out to prospects who fill out a form on the website, et cetera. And from a tech perspective, which of course is a big focus of this show, Lex Reception has integrations with a lot of legal tech platforms like Clio and Practice Panther and LawPay and many more. So they fit in with law firms' workflows. So for anybody who is interested in trying Lex Reception for your law firm, listeners of the show get $250 off their first month of service. So check them out. There's a specific link in the show notes that'll get you those $250 off. Reach out to them, and of course, tell them that you heard about them from the GMI Rocket show. So thank you to Lex Reception. Okay, so back to you, E. You are, you're at Microsoft for a number of years, and then you take kind of a leap. And now it's a little bit more common, but at this point, there are not many VC-backed firms or companies in the immigration space. So you joined LegalPad as director of legal, and VP of client services. I mean, from your LinkedIn profile, you were there for a couple of years. Talk about that. I mean, that's a very different situation. You're no longer filing applications or really acting as a lawyer. What was that role like? Product manager? Was it strategic? Was it operational? What did you do there?
Yeah. So it was to start, it was a leap of faith, because leaving Microsoft to join a startup was scary. But at that point, LegalPad just received $10 million in funding. And when I met Todd and saw his vision at that point was he wanted to build something where you hit button, you get visa, right? And this was 2020, so right before COVID, but AI wasn't what it is today. So this was still really, really, really new of a concept of, okay, let's do O1s, EB1s, EB2 and IWs for startup founders, but in a way using technology. So when I joined, I was so intrigued by that idea because I used to do a lot of O1s and EB1s back in my Fragment days. So when I came on, my job wasn't to be a lawyer anymore. And I loved that. It's just, so I don't have to be the attorney of record, but I can, hire legal teams, manage lawyers, manage immigration specialists, create the workflow, create the KPIs, work with our tech teams. Those are all the really exciting things of how do I partner with Todd, the CEO, and make his vision become reality? Because a lot of tech CEOs, not all, some of them are actually, they're good at everything, but some of them, they're really, really good at creating a very strong vision and hopefully getting funding for that vision. But there is an execution piece when they partner well with an operator who can come in and say, okay, these are the things you need to do to execute on that. These are your workflows, these are your templates, these are your KPIs, OKRs, these are your dashboard. It helps them make their vision become a reality. And I think it was a mutual leap of faith because for me, I did a little bit of it at Microsoft, but I had never done a completely non-legal role before. I felt very strongly, I believe I could do it, and Todd believed I could do it, but it was a leap of faith for both of us. And I think it worked out really well because we were able to build a really strong legal team. And we created a concept that's now copied by a lot of other tech startup in this space. And we talk about that, and right now ABS. But so at that point, it was a novel idea of creating a space where the startup could partner with attorneys on essentially almost full-time flat fee model, right? So because per case would get too expensive as your volume scale. And figuring out how to make that work was really, really exciting.
Were you there for the acquisition, or did you leave before the acquisition happened?
I left right when the acquisition happened, just because of the next opportunity.
Yeah. So let's get to that, because I think that's where you really that was actually one of the second longest jobs that you held when you moved over to BDV. So you came over to BDV. By the way, amazing. You went from immigration lawyer, and then in a handful of years, you're the chief. You started, I think, in a different role, but I guess you ended as a chief operating officer, or did you come in as a COO?
So I did not come in as the COO. I came in as the senior VP of operations, and then I became the COO. So just like at LegalPad, where I joined as the director of legal, and then I became the VP of client services. So looking back, it was really exciting to basically stop being a lawyer, and within 5 years, I was a COO of a company.
Talk a little bit about that. So for those who don't know, even immigration lawyers who may not know, or other immigration folks, so BDV Solutions is a company that, it's not a law firm, but it's a company that helps individuals file, over for the most part, EB3, quote unquote, unskilled visas, right? So BDV, correct me if I'm saying that, I'm trying to also understand it when I say it. So BDV basically partners with employers of unskilled workers, so maybe restaurants or factories of some sort, or warehouses or something that need labor, and BDV Solutions brings in foreign labor and helps them apply for EB3 green cards and take these positions. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, so good job, Roman. And I know that, Britt Verdnall, the founder of BDV, was on your show previously. So I think she will be so proud of the summary that
summary.
So essentially when I joined, so BDV has grown significantly since in the time that I was there. And now they're doing great. But when I initially joined BDV, the opportunity came up organically because what they did at that point was they were the matchmaker. They would find employers who are in need of labor, and they would also find the foreign nationals who want to come to the U.S. and the green card. So they would matchmake, and then they would help the employers do the perm process in connection with the attorney, and then do the entire immigrant process to then bring the foreign national over. And the unique thing about BDV was, and this is all public information on their website, they are full service. So it's not a normal law firm, because law firms don't do recruitment. They also do the recruitment, but they also don't stop there. They do the recruitment, they do the immigration case prep, but then they also do post-arrival assistance. They would also help with finding housing, transportation, bank accounts, etc. So relocation and onboarding services. So it was basically the entire package, which was really, really exciting. And the reason why I joined BDV was, at that time, I left right before LegalPad was acquired by Deal, because this was just an opportunity I couldn't pass up. And the opportunity was BDV was acquired by private equity, who then said, hey, listen, we need to really scale the company significantly. I can't go into the numbers, but hey, we're filing X number of cases per year. We need to essentially triple that in 1 year. And we need someone with know-how to make it happen. What do we need in order to, in a year from now, look back and say we tripled our production? And we're not talking about small numbers. I can't give you the exact numbers, but we're talking, in the thousands, right? Of cases. So I was brought on with, really, that was my main objective. When Britt brought me on, was help. What do we need? Look at our processes. What do we need to do in order to scale up our operations at this level, 3x it? And it was really exciting to figure out those pieces of the puzzle, with the legal team, with the operations team, with the onboarding team, with the tech team, with finance, making all these pieces work together so that we did deliver that. We actually, when we did 3x our operations within 1 year, and we reduced our legal spend by 60%.
Wow. What did that entail for you? Like, what did that look like for you? Was it, coming up with standard operating procedures and sharing them with people who were doing things ad hoc? Was it building in technology where things were done manually? Like, I imagine that this is where you really, had the chance to flex this muscle and be creative and have the authority to try stuff, see what works and see what doesn't, which obviously eventually ended up being Optima LegalOps. But like, what did that look like for you at BDV when you were scaling? And then eventually after that first year, you continued to, the company acquired more businesses, et cetera. But what was that for you?
Yeah. So it wasn't just creating, SOPs, because it was problem solving, right? Because if we were just documenting with SOPs of what we were already doing, there was no way we could scale at this volume. So the first thing I needed to do was figuring, and anyone who's worked with me has heard me say this a million times, who's holding the hot potato, right? Essentially is who's doing what and when are they doing it and why are they doing it? Because what a lot of companies, and now with Optima, when I talk to a lot of my clients, once we get to the root of it, we realize a lot of the things that your team might be doing may not be the right thing for that person, that role in your team to do, or it may be the right thing for them to do, but it may not be the right thing for them to do at that time. So figuring out, and really, so it wasn't, before an SOP can be created, it was a massive reorg. It was figuring out who needs to do what and when, and then reorganizing what the organization looks like so that it made more operational sense, right? And then creating a way so that we can, I can't go into the details, but giving strategies where we can cut legal span by essentially creating our own mini law firm, but it can't just operate like a normal law firm. It had to operate like a business. So the first thing was operational change, massive reorg. And then from that reorg, once we figure out, okay, what each role needs to do, then we do SOPs of, okay, how are they going to do that? And when are they going to do those responsibilities? And then mapping out KPIs for individual roles.
And did you also look at like technology that the company was using or where there were gaps that technology could fill?
Yes, definitely. So, so BDV, and maybe Britt also mentioned this. So BDV had its own technology platform as well. So definitely it was working with our tech and product team to figuring out what is our current tech, but also with any platform, and this is nothing against BDV. I think they're great, but with any platform, especially when you're building it yourself, there are going to be holes that need to be plugged in, right? So my stance has always been, from an operational perspective, you work with technology and you find ways for technology to help you, but technology cannot be a blocker. Because what a lot of companies end up doing was, well, we'll fix that once our tech catches up and then we'll fix the problem. So what I always say is, well, we can have short-term fixes now, because otherwise you're still going to be a lot more efficient if you find low-tech, no-tech solution in the meantime, while you're also fixing your broader tech issues.
Yeah.
So yes, it was working with tech, but also knowing when to create band-aids so that the business can still operate while the tech issues are being sorted out.
Yeah. Interesting. That's cool. Because a lot of times people would say, well, I don't want to have a temporary tech solution. Let's just wait for the, longer term solution to be built. But your point is, well, you're losing time and money while you're waiting. And at this point that even if you have a timeline of 6 months for something to be launched, realistically, it's going to be a year or more.
Yes.
Like everything. And I know this now too, from a tech perspective, everything takes so much longer because bugs come up, because you have to test multiple times, because, requirements change along the way. I mean, there's so many different situations. So you're doing this, you help BDV scale for, in that first year. And then you continue to help it scale and continue to help it operationalize. You were there for 3.5 years. And then at some point, you've now been working your butt off for, over a decade. You jumped ship a couple of times. You had to relearn new environments and constantly push yourself as an immigration professional, legal professional. You decide to start your own business, right? Tell me a little bit about that. Like, kind of what made you start to think about this even being
Yeah.
viable as a business, and kind of, I guess, if you can share, what was that maybe point where you said, you know what, I'm going to take the leap. And by the
Yeah.
way, I preface this by saying that I think the answer to this question could be the thing that inspires somebody else. For me, when
Yeah.
I was working and I had the idea for Laborless, I probably should have stayed longer, but I
Yeah.
wanted to leave earlier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I was waiting for the right time, for the right amount of motivation. And only eventually was I like, you know what? I've baked this out enough, and I think there could be something here. Let me take a leap of faith. What was that for you that helped you take that leap of faith?
Yeah. So I think it was the external interest that started to pour in, right? So when I was at BDV, I can't go into a lot of details, but we scaled, the company scaled. It was very successful, and we became, from one company, by the time we left, we were 6 or 7 companies. So we had a lot of acquisitions at that point. And being the COO, I was also intimately involved in the post acquisition integration of these companies. So and I think one of the things that at that point was the reason why I didn't take the leap of faith sooner was because I was always trained. There was this voice that said, "You're a lawyer. You have a JD. You're not a business person. How can you think that you can do this on your own? You're not trained for this." But I think what really helped me was, I think I have a fairly decent LinkedIn community, and you and I, we've been doing this for over a decade. So I think at some point, the good thing about business immigration is it's a very close knit community, and after a while, everyone kind of knows everyone or knows someone who knows someone. So I think what gave me the courage to do this was just starting to get inquiries from people who say, "Hey, E, I heard from so and so that you're really good at helping to solve business problems or with operational structures. Can I get 30 minutes of your time? Can I talk? Can you help me through XYZ problem? Hey, I hear that you're really good at creating templates or SOPs or with reorgs or with helping figure out what tech stack to use. Can I just have a little bit of your time?" And at first, I think I was just like, "Yeah, of course, and sure." But I think after a while, I said, if there's this or much organic interest in this, I mean, the interest started out slowly. This is not something that I was getting 10 of these calls every week.
Right.
Even if once a month somebody unprovoked was reaching out to ask my advice on something, it made me think maybe there's something there. And just that immigrant mentality of no one's going to hand you anything. If you want to do something, you have to build it yourself. And I realized, well, maybe I do have this community behind me. Maybe I do have built enough of a reputation for myself that people do think I understand this space. And then, so, then instead of just saying, "Oh yeah, of course I can jump on 30 minutes for free and just advise you as a friend or, because of a mutual acquaintance," I started putting feelers out there of, well, sure, but my quote is X dollars, would you be willing to do it? And the first time I did that, Roman, it was terrifying, right? Like when people actually really pay me to consult, I know they would pay me to be an employee, but would they actually pay me, as separately as a professional consultant? And what I found out was I was pleasantly surprised by the number of people who didn't bat an eye and said, "Well, of course, your time is valuable and we'll pay you for your service because there's really no one else in the market who understand this space as much as you do." We've tried using the Big Four. We've tried going to EY and PwC to help for their consultants to help us solve our problem. They don't know this space.
Right. Exactly. I love that. Has your fee gone up since then?
So no, but I've been a lot because I think I started high. Because I think when I started out, it was more just testing the market of what's there. But I think, I started Optima in June. And since then, I've been more creative with different fee models because some clients may like hourly fees and some may be project based, or some may want flat fee for a certain number of hours per month. And being able to just listen to clients and hopefully try to work with them and meet them where they're at has
Yeah.
really helped. And I think for me, that was a big learning curve for me, because even though I know this space, being a business owner is brand new skill set, right? So just learning of how do I run my own business was something that I had to learn, slowly, and I'm still learning.
I suspect, I mean, me too. And I suspect that people who are in business for many decades are always learning.
Yeah.
What does Optima do? Like, right. I mean, you've shared the story, you've shared how you got to starting the business and the early days of, going from a friendly call to a real consultation. Today, in early 2026, what does Optima do? Who do you help? How do you help them? Like, what's the pitch basically?
Yeah. So let's start with who do I help? So right now, what I do is I love helping immigration startups, tech companies, and also small to mid-sized law firms. So that's my target audience: startups, mid and small law firms. How do I help them? Well, I offer a range of services, and they include things like some law firm may need help with their process flow. So they're just like, hey, can you come in to basically do an audit of how we're currently working and help us revise our process so that we're more efficient. We feel like there's just a lot of waste within our company. So my job is to come in and really audit what's everybody doing, and then help them come up with a revised workflow that's more efficient. So that's actually one of my favorite things to do. And I've gotten really, really good feedback from clients to say, wow, you've really helped us. We are so much more productive now because everyone is really clear of what they're doing and when they're doing it.
Cool.
And I love it because it's like a puzzle piece that you have to solve. So in addition to that, right now, there's a lot of interest with just different tech projects of, hey, data projects, or can you help advise us on which CRM to use, or we're doing data migration, or even, hey, we are interested in creating our own immigration case management. Can you give us input and advice into that? Because honestly, I've used probably every single case management there is known to man at this point, right? And I've used them in a lot of different spaces, startup space, big tech, boutique firm, big law. So it gives me a really unique perspective on, okay, this is what your intended audience needs, right? And then third, so the top three things are process flow. That's something that I enjoy. Tech projects and data projects. And the third things right now, especially for startup clients, is ABS is alternative business structure. Is something that is a lot of interest right now. And just helping companies successfully apply for Arizona ABS has been something that I've done quite a few on.
That's awesome. And that's like the new frontier of the immigration space. And so are you always open for business? I mean, for people listening, if this might be interesting to them, especially if they're law firms, but even the tech companies, should they reach out to you? I mean, should they connect with you on LinkedIn?
Definitely. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I respond very, very quickly. And Roman, I think, so one thing I do want to call out is, even though Optima has been in business since June, my website still says under development. And the reason why is I have been working.
So busy. Yeah.
I've been working on client projects. So I think, and thankfully it's because of all the wonderful referrals from people based on the successes that I've been doing. But I promise my goal is, hopefully by June of this year, my website will be up. But I am in business and I am taking on clients. So definitely, if you have any need, please reach out. I can help solve your operational problems.
I love it. You're the immigration law firm and business doctor. How do you feel about ABS? I mean, it's definitely growing in popularity. There are a lot more, tech companies that are raising funding, right? They're getting venture capital funding. because of the fact that they can or will, are currently or will get, accepted into the ABS program and be able to run a traditional quote unquote law practice with outside funding. I mean, what do you see there? Do you see that this is going to be the future of immigration? Do you think it'll overtake traditional firms? Do you think it's just going to live side by side? What's your insight there?
I think it'll live side by side because, at the end of the day, is Fragment and Bell and Ericsson Immigration, EAG going away? Absolutely not. They all have really strong enterprise and corporate clients, but definitely the ABS space tend to target, maybe they will hopefully change and evolve, but right now they tend to target towards smaller and mid-sized companies. But definitely ABS is something that a lot of immigration startups are looking into. And in fact, Boundless just got their approval for their ABS.
Nice.
If anyone's interested, it's actually all public record. You can actually see their it's all on video, their entire interview with the Arizona Supreme Court system. So yeah, I don't think it's going away anytime soon. And I think so ABS is one of those things where you really need someone to help you and advise you on how best to set up this business. I think there's a lot of potential, and I think it's not a conflict with traditional law firm. I think they can both live in harmony side by side.
Yeah, because that's been interesting to see. Because to your point, Boundless, LegalPad. Let's talk about LegalPad, where you worked. It was that model before ABS, right? It was a tech platform that helped with a lot of the front end with the law firm or a lawyer as a contractor on the back end. Boundless and Bridge were the same. Envoy Global, which used to be Visa now, the same, right? Trinet, no, not Trinet. Border, what is it called? There's a company that was acquired by Trinet. Wow, I can't believe I forgot this. They haven't been around for a long time. There's another company that was doing something similar that was acquired, before, like, kind of when we started. So this model has been around where there's a tech company that is not legally affiliated with the law firm, but maybe contractually they're sort of, they're contracted. The tech side of it, and therefore the marketing side and the sales side, that raises venture capital. And then you have a law firm on the back end. Here with the ABS structure, you have everything combined in one place, which you can argue like, well, what's the difference? But I guess incentives are different. The lawyers, they're now employees of the company. They can't just come and go as they please as contractors. So I guess there's a bit more continuity there. Right. But it's been really interesting to see that pop up. Because it's like a new paradigm, and it makes the most sense for immigration law firms and maybe a few other verticals because of the federal nature of immigration law.
Correct. Yeah.
Where do you see, I've recently been doing a little bit of merger and acquisition discussions, right? And I think part of what is going to kind of lead to growth is going to be the roll up and the combination of firms into this ABS structure. So I don't know, I guess, do you have any thoughts on that? And by the way, if and when that happens, they're going to come knocking on your door, because when you have one company that's venture backed acquiring small or boutique immigration firms, the operational nightmare that's going to cause will need somebody like you. So just as a note for anybody watching and listening, have E on your Rolodex or speed dial.
Yeah, definitely. For any M&A, just operation management post acquisition. But yes, to your point of, would it be a situation where can I see 5 or 10 years from now, larger firms buying smaller firms, creating an ABS structure? Or actually, what I see that, but I see it slightly different. I could see someone like not a traditional law firm, but a Boundless, who has an ABS, starting to buy additional smaller firms to roll up into their existing ABS. So what I will be able to look out for will be kind of the tech companies who have ABS buying small companies and rolling them into an ABS, rather than law firms creating ABS and rolling into a bigger ideas.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. And I'm kind of seeing the same thing.
Yeah.
And again, that's going to be great for your business. They're going to need you. So, as we kind of wrap up here, I guess the last question that I like to ask is you recently started your business, although you've been doing this work for a long time, but at other companies, and now you're finally kind of working for yourself, and therefore you can provide these services to other immigration firms and immigration tech companies and startups. The question that I like to sort of end these interviews on is, what advice are you listening to right now? Like, what is some advice that is relevant to you where you are in your business today that you can share?
Yeah. So one thing, Roma, you and I talked about this quite a lot. I started an MBA about 3.5 years ago, and with how busy things were at my job at that time, I put it on hold, and I recently restarted it. And the advice that I'm learning from the MBA has been so helpful for me running my own business now. And recently, I did a LinkedIn post about this because it was true. I felt like last semester for the MBA, I paid, I took a course, I paid $4,000, and really because it was a leadership course. And the main lesson I got from that was to pause and listen. Right. So I said I paid $4,000 to learn how to pause and listen, but it was so worth it because as a consultant, as someone who owns my own business, and my job is to listen to clients and figuring out what are their problems so that I can help them solve it. I really do need to constantly remind myself to just take a step back and make sure I'm listening to the right problems to solve for the right solutions, right?
Yeah. Do you find, just on that note, did you feel like it was a challenge for you to really like listen in the way that you now realize you have to? Was it hard for you to listen before?
1,000,000%. And I think part of it is because I'm a doer by nature. I want to get things done. I want to solve your problem, right? And I think part of it is also, I don't want to read too much into it, but I do think that there's also an immigrant side to it, where you really don't feel like you have to prove yourself. I want to prove myself all the time. I feel, no matter, even though I'm very established in my career right now, every client I get, I treat them like they're my best client because I get this jolt of happiness when I hear from them, you did a really good job, right? Yeah. And maybe that's part of the immigrant mentality I have, where I want to be really, really good, and I want them to tell me that I helped them. So yes, pausing and listen is something that I still have to remind myself to do all the time because my natural instinct is I want to solve your problem. I want to solve your problem now because you're telling me you have this problem. And just pausing it, that doesn't mean delaying. And so I want to make that really clear. Pausing is just really making sure I understand and then execute rather than just procrastinating.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't taken that leadership course, but I spent 10 years doing improv theater. And actually I even took classes and I performed a show when we were down in Virginia.
Yeah.
I remember. But the most basic tenet of improv, it's yes and, but the idea is being present and actively listening. And that has helped me so much. And I spent way more than $4,000 over my time in improv, but it is hard. And I think if I were to ask myself that question, I think some of it for me is ego, because when someone is talking and explaining their problem, if I think I know what their problem is, I used to be more likely to cut them off and say, "Oh, got it. Okay. So what you're saying, blah, 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 blah," right? Like I want to finish their sentence and I want to tell them that I understand their problem when they're not done yet. And then, pretend like I know it all. It's really taken me a lot of work, and I'm still not great at it. I'll still cut people off sometimes, and I catch myself and I'll apologize It's a work in progress, but I've realized that sometimes they don't get to that little jewel of information until the very end. They're saying something and you're like, okay, got it. I know exactly what you're saying. I've seen this before, like no problem. And then they say some little thing at the end and you're like, ooh, that's different. And if I hadn't waited, I wouldn't have known that. And that's the core of your issue, or that's the core of your question. So, I think for me, partly it's like some kind of ego thing where, like you said, maybe it comes from wanting to prove myself, where if I respond faster, maybe it sounds like I know what I'm talking about. Right. But like, I think to your point, once you get more experience, the more experienced you are, actually, the more comfortable you are with listening quietly and taking your time, because you're confident that you can solve problems. I think when you're getting started, for me, this was definitely the case. I thought that speed was the thing that showed that. And now I'm realizing that, to your point, patience and listening is the thing that shows that. So I love that point. And I ask you because I do want to think deeply into it. I think that's what's interesting. And hopefully if folks are listening to this, and this is a challenge of theirs or something they're considering, maybe they'll pause and reflect too. Why, how do I listen better? Et cetera. So, this was awesome. I'm so excited to watch you go from all the crazy things you've been doing to now finally starting your own business and sharing your expertise with the world. You already mentioned people could find you on LinkedIn. And of course, your website is it optimalegalconsulting.com?
Optima LegalOps.
LegalOps, sorry. optimalegalOps.com. Which, while it's still in progress, there is a way to enter your email address, so they can still get in touch with you through there.
Yes, but the best way, message me on LinkedIn. I respond very, very quickly, and we'll schedule time to talk.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. Thank you so much for being here. I wish you the best of luck. I'm excited to continue to watch you grow your business and see your work in the different companies that are popping up. So I wish you all the best, and thank you so much for coming on the show. It was wonderful.
Thank you for having me, Roman.
Have an awesome weekend. Thank you. What an awesome conversation. Thank you so much. By the way, we were talking, and we did have a comment here from Helen, who said, joining late here, but happy to hear insights from E. Sorry, Helen, I was so into the conversation. I didn't even get a chance to bring that up, but thank you for the comment. Thank you for everybody for watching. Really, really interesting and really exciting. And I think it's going to be a very necessary part of the immigration industry going forward as more tech companies pop up and as more law firms look to operationalize and scale and grow. So I wanted to say a quick thank you to the main sponsor again, 8 a.m. DocketWise. I won't repeat the whole thing, but for anyone who does not know who DocketWise is an end-to-end immigration case management platform with immigration forms, which is frankly their bread and butter. Some folks even use DocketWise only for forms and use something else for case management. Really customizable questionnaires, industry-leading integrations, wonderful customer service. DocketWise creates lots of content for the industry through blogs and ebooks. So if you're a lawyer and you have questions about, how do I go from family-based practice to employment-based practice? What are ways I can market my firm? Things like that. How do I build a website? DocketWise has wonderful blogs on those topics. So check them out. There's a link in the show notes, or visit 8am.com/DocketWise. And if you do chat with them, tell them you heard about them from the GMI Rocket show. So with that, thank you everybody so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful weekend coming up. Be safe and peace out.